morning, afternoon, evening, depending upon whichever part of the world you are today. It is my honor to welcome senior leaders from across the sectors and across the geographies to this really compelling session. Reputation and Risk, Communicating Climate Leadership in a Skeptical Age. It is held under the theme Shaping the Future, Voices of Change during Climate Week New York City 2025. At this level, I would really like Jacques, you and Aldo to do quick introductions for all of our audiences, and then we're going to get into a deep dive conversation on this really amazing topic. Please, Jacques, may I ask you to start first and then Aldo you?
Sure. Jacques Philippe Reyes, Group Director and Global Head of Marketing, Communications, and Sustainability at DKSH Healthcare. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacques. Aldo.
Hi, Aldo Zucaro, and I lead corporate responsibility for CooperCompanies, which includes both our Cooper Vision division and our Cooper Surgical division.
Thank you, Aldo, and thanks for both of you to join. And just for audiences, my name is Aman Gupta. I'm the managing partner at Fin Partners, responsible for health and purpose across Asia Pacific. Now, let's sort of start, before I sort of get into a conversation, Jacques, with you and Aldo, let's look at where we are. We are convening at a moment when climate leadership is simultaneously essential, but also relentlessly scrutinized against a backdrop of what we kind of sort of really call is a campaign of disinformation and declining institutional trust. Organizations face the dual challenge of demonstrating genuine climate action while safeguarding credibility. Just some of the data points which we have kind of seen right now. One we are sort of seeing is what we call is a phenomena of pluralistic ignorance. While the people are, there is a huge support from the public about the climate change, it's not something which is known to the poor people per se. The second part is this is what we call a spiral of silence. The people who are really sort of supporting the climate are not the people who are very actively voicing it. And the third, as I said, there is a climate misinformation, and that is really led by a lot of kind of bots and the trolls, which are really sort of changing the way the narrative of climate change is happening. And this is where the fact comes in that how credible organizations like DKSH, Cooper, and so many others need to reclaim narrative around the climate wake and have an authority on it. Today, between the two of you, what we would really like to sort of discuss is strategies and how do we really speak to the power and really reduce the skepticism which exists and bring in a more authentic, transparent, and impactful communication when it comes to climate change. Now, the first question I really like to sort of ask Jacques from you first is, how do you see as a communicator organization proving authenticity beyond just press releases and public relations? How do you go beyond that to sort of prove that authenticity and build trust among the stakeholders?
Thank you, Aman. I mean, I think we can all agree that making claims by itself isn't enough anymore to prove credibility. Organizations today have to support these claims with real data and with real action. With that said, within healthcare and across industries, it's encouraging to see that there's more adoption of verified frameworks like mandates, including the IFRS S2 climate related disclosures, the EU's corporate sustainability reporting directives that are turning from voluntary to more of a requirement. There are also audits like ISO and PSCI, and we see that these directives and these independent audits really help to provide a layer of trust that the companies can show for their commitment and their authenticity for progress and change.
Thank you, Jacques. So, although, based on what sort of Jacques said, from your perspective, as somebody who is a sustainability champion, how do you sort of, would like to add to what Jacques said from really sort of doing the disclosures, really bringing in the data in a more authentic way? That's something which we are hearing, but is there anything else you believe needs to be done to really build that kind of a trust and authenticity around climate change?
Yeah, there's quite a bit that happens, and Jacques is right. The catalyst for these are these mandates, these reporting frameworks, but there's activity that needs to happen inside businesses, and that's really where the spark happens. I mean, the businesses today have very, very organized and fundamentally well-structured financial reporting.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be an equal structured climate reporting. We have to look for the systems that count and recognize the carbon in the organization. The authenticity comes from actual good data, not estimated data, not made up data, not pretend data. Um, Organizations have to move away slightly, and we've been working on this. Is nice stories are great, and I love telling a good story, but fundamentally in organization, in functions, in departments at the ground level, people have to start understanding that their decisions around what they buy, what they do, how they make has an impact both on the financial aspect of an organization, but also on its climate impact. And when we start creating that fundamental ground floor, we start elevating the importance of this data, such that when somebody repeats it, they repeat it from a place of known, not from a place of sort of estimations or guessing. Um, we have to bring it out of the closet. It needs to be showcased.
And also, just to sort of extend what you're sort of saying, do you think there is a need for democratizing this kind of a climate data which kind of exists both in the way the climate is changing because of the way things are happening, as well as really bringing out the data not just from a company level, but making it sort of much more easily accessible to the people so that they can make more informed choices, they can have more informed decisions, they can be a more informed person. And how do you really see uh, both role of the communication, but also from a regulatory side? Is there a need to have a more structured regulation to say these are the data which needs to be told? And as you said, not just estimate, but the data has to be good enough for people to have a trust in the data, and based on that trust, they can take decisions.
Yeah. So and Jacques mentioned this earlier. There is a sea of regulations out there. I'd like to see some unification. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it causes distrust when organizations are facing one regulation or one jurisdiction in one part of the world, another regulation, another jurisdiction, data that is similar but yet not exact. It burdens the organization. That burden creates a level of distrust. That distrust sort of discounts all of the efforts. And so while I applaud the regulators in their efforts at sort of elevating these issues, at the same time, they disappoint me. I would like to see one framework, one activity. It's expensive for organizations to go collect and manage this data. I could speak for our organization. Having to manage different frameworks for different part of the countries or the world, I should say, is debilitating. And it makes senior leadership walk away instead of walking towards.
So, just based on that, Aldo, you said that, as an organization, Cooper Group is doing its bit, and I know Sharks, the DKS also has a play in the climate side of it. So, can I ask each of you to sort of just give an example of what each of your organization is doing in this particular space before we get into the question about the misperceptions which exist around the climate change and what's really happening around here. So, Jacques, maybe I can start from you.
Yeah, sure, Aman. I mean, we've been publishing our annual sustainability report for a few years now, even before it's been mandated. And we really do try our best to share the data. I do feel for you, Aldo. There are too many different regulations, too many different frameworks, and it is a burden on the company. And oftentimes, we do our best, but it can be overwhelming. On our end, we try our best to share what data we can to the public and to our stakeholders, to our ecosystem partners. We recently did a project with UOB FinLabs and Smart Trades, a company in Singapore that specializes in carbon footprint consulting, where we looked at the carbon emissions reductions from a sustainable packaging
Mhm.
effort we did in Thailand. And with this data, we shared it with our partners, the public, to try to inculcate this kind of effort into the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Jacques. And I think that's really, I sort of heard about that work which you have done. And I think it's really is something which can really show that, if you have an intent, you can really make things happen. Although anything from Cooper Group, which you would like to sort of share.
Yeah. So there's the notion of making sustainability accessible. We've been working with an organization called Plastic Bank. One of the things that we've been working on is offsetting our plastic footprint. To date, we've been able to extract the equivalent of 500 million plastic bottles that were ocean bound. We're giving people the opportunity to make choices, small choices in the way they think about products that have an impact. So that impact is real to them. In addition to doing things like offsetting plastic and giving people an opportunity to sort of see that impact, we're also working on the other side and really challenging our suppliers to provide lower carbon, more efficient machinery and equipment. We believe there's an opportunity to make the things that we make better. But as I said earlier, it's really about preparing the organization to understand the ramifications of decisions and allowing people, thousands of people, there's 14,000 people that work at Cooper. It would be impossible to try to mandate what 14,000 people do. But what we can do is help them with tools that help them make good, smart decisions. And if we do that, we discover that people do that, whether it's encouraging our suppliers to be more efficient with the equipment, the things that we can buy. We talk about making things better. And then on the other side, if we can't yet control it, let's look to offset it.
Thank you, Aldo. I had another question which I wanted to ask, but based on what it says of hearing, I have a kind of a question prior to that. And the reason is because, as Fin partners, we work with both DKSH and we work with Cooper Vision, and and we work in a huge kind of a health ecosystem. That's the space in which I personally kind of operate. And one thing which we have seen but not seen enough is that in the health ecosystem, there's a lot of collaboration which is required, because when you have to deliver health, is not some one organization can do. This is, you need multiple organizations to be part of that to make happen. Do you think there is a possibility, and if yes, then how can the fact that companies are doing and what they're doing from the climate side can become one of the key factors when companies are saying, this is what I would like to partner with, this is the partner which I would sort of prefer, and therefore these disclosures which are there needs to be part of the ask in a much more detailed database. Right now, people do asking, okay, are you following something? It's more of a checkbox. It's not a very detailed conversation. But do you think in the future, a very detailed conversation between possible partners can happen, and this can become, how do you say, this could become really a very critical factor for that partnership to move from discussion to actual happening? And either of can you answer this question to start with? Let me not be the one to tell.
Sure, maybe I can go first. It's not just possible. I think it's critical. As a company like DKSH, we work with a lot of the big principal healthcare and life sciences companies, and we are constantly looking to partner with them on initiatives, on pilots. The pilot I was talking about earlier about sustainable packaging in Thailand was also including one of our clients. And I think for us, we understand that it's a system issue. We can't solve it alone. And as we work with others, it just magnifies the work that we do and the impact that we have. At the end of the day, we can't work in isolation. And a lot of the touch points that we have cross boundaries across different sectors, different channels as well.
100% agree with Jacques. I mean, there's very little to add. I think you said it best. It is critical for the evolution of this, for partnerships to continue, foster, and grow. You can't do it alone. I mean, we just can't do it alone. We look at so many different opportunities, and they are virtually impossible to shoulder by yourself.
Thank you. And I think from my side, the only thing I could sort of possibly add is that, sometime last year we were working in Malaysia with the financial and the banking ecosystem, and one of the key conversation amongst them was that how they need to really look at the climate impact of the companies and having its impact on the lending. that if the companies are more climate, carbon neutral, so the lending field can be much more easier, interest rates could be down. So you need to be like looking at more incentives from a financial side. And we saw that that was really working well. The companies were like really sort of saying, if I have a carbon less footprint across, I'm getting debt at a lower cost. And so therefore once you incentivize, they become much more, how do you say, excited to get these things moving. And there's a much more buy-in amongst the leadership to sort of go with that. Now, let's sort of change the track now. And what I would really like to understand is that one, do you think there is misperception amongst the larger population across the world about the climate change, its impact, and what the companies are kind of doing? And if it is, then what as as companies and communicators should be doing? And it's not just about talking about the companies, which we represent, but in a larger context, shall we be doing to really, change that misperception and sort of really bring in the true support which exists about the climate change, which people are sort of, would really like sort of go, as I said, in my early time, there is a kind of a spiral of silence. People are not very vocal about the climate support. So how can we really make it happen?
Yeah, let me start. Look,
Mhm.
one of the problems that that we see every day is that the general media has over dramatized the climate in so many doomsday scenarios. And while I believe that many of those have many absolute truths associated with it, it is overwhelming. It is absolutely overwhelming. We have wars in one part of the world. We have things going on in other parts of the world. There's people starving in other parts of the world. It is debilitating when consumers think about it. And so one of the things that we've been working really hard to do is to localize, not globalize the activities that are people. What can you do in your neighborhood? What can you do with your neighbors? What can you do in your ecosphere? And what we found is that most people care. They care deeply about the environment around us. And where they get overwhelmed is, you know what? I can neither save the icebergs, nor can I stop the war in Eastern Europe. Like there are things that I just cannot do. But you know what I can do? I can act on the thing right in front of me. I can save some plastic. I can recycle a little bit better. I can take action where I am. And what we found is when we give people the opportunity to localize what they're doing, the sediment towards the environment and their aspects grows. Clean water in your neighborhood, no matter who I talk to and where I talk to them, when I say clean water in their neighborhood, there is not a soul that says, what can I do to help that? If I say clean water for the world, they look at me and go, you're boiling the ocean. I don't know what to do for you. We have to bring the conversation down. It's fine for at some level to take that global view, but we have to bring the conversation down to where people can act.
Really interesting,
100%
Aldo.
agree.
Jacques,
I mean,
go ahead.
I mean, I think, like what Aldo was saying, we need to meet the audience and our people where they are. And especially in places in Southeast Asia, a lot of them are interested, but they don't know very much. So for us at DKSH, we really started to ramp up communication and education, even within our own backyard, within our colleagues, within our teams. And a lot of them are super interested when we have, the topics at our company town halls. We've also established a network of sustainability champions to really advocate at a local level. Like with Cooper, we also have thousands of employees, 8,000 employees for DKSH Healthcare alone. And when we put a face to the issues, when we let them know how it affects their patients, their communities, their team members, and show that these are the people driving the efforts and what it impacts, it really resonates so much stronger.
Yeah, 100% agree. Thanks for that. I mean, that's exactly right. Putting a face on these issues and people that can relate to, it changes the dynamic of what people are willing to do. Absolutely does.
And Jacques, I think that's something which I don't think I had considered as a communicator. You always want to sort of do this big, bold things which should make a headline next day. But I think the perspective which both of you have brought in, that it's more about empowering the community in which you are, or that individual which is there, making them empowered to say that you have a role to play. And then that individual could become like a much larger group instead of sort of saying, let's boil the ocean and make things happen. Uh, I think that's a very important aspect which you brought in. The other bit which already you talked about was the media, that how media is kind of over dramatizing or like really overwhelming what's kind of happening, and that scares the people or sort of get them to take a step back, saying, this is just too big a thing for me to do anything about. And I think, Shak, this is a question from as a communication from your perspective. Do you think there is a need to educate the media about what really is happening? And I would look at a kind of a parallel that when we run any kind of, say, a disease awareness campaign, uh, we sort of demystify the thing. We really talk about what's really happening. And we have seen that really working. You have people who become much more informed, they become much more, educated, they become much more engaged on that topic. And when they are educated, their ability to editorially make people more informed becomes easier. So, do you think there is that a need for something like that? And do you think this is something which can be done at a institutional level?
Educate the media. To some extent, I don't know if it's an education issue. I
Hmm.
mean, I do recognize that the media landscape is evolving and journalism today is moving so quickly. It's become much more complicated. The cost of entry for journalism or for content these days is so low, and there's so much misinformation and disinformation. I mean, I think honestly, we need to remember that the role of the media is to inform and to hold companies accountable, and it's their job to educate themselves as well before they report on these things and before they amplify these stories. So I do feel like there is an opportunity there, but the education, it's a questionable subject for me.
Aldo, do you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know about educating the media. I think there is because the cost of entry on content is so low, there is incentive to sensationalize. And that
Hmm.
sensationalizing sort of tends to over dramatize areas. Um, I'd love for everybody to just take a pause and start talking about some of the things that are actually going on, and without the dramatization of those effects. Because and we've said this, if a handful of companies all do roughly the same thing in terms of saving their carbon or understanding their carbon footprint, we change the landscape drastically.
Mm.
If we all sit around and point fingers at the one that we think should be doing something, nothing really happens. And sort of media, in my perspective, sometimes likes to point fingers instead of sort of encourage others to jump in.
Fair enough. So I think that does make a lot of sense. And they were extending what Jacques, you talked about the fact that there's so much of a misinformation and disinformation and rumors which are there. The narrative around is something which is led by either boss trolls or people who we don't even know who they are, but they're creating a lot of mistrust in terms of what's really happening. Everything is kind of skeptical in nature. There's a lot of questioning which has happened. At this juncture where this is a big issue, as people from a communication industry, do you think there is a role which can be played, or what can really be done to sort of ensure that that does not overtake and shape the narrative in a way which is completely, how does it, doesn't have any facts or trust to it? Is that even a possibility, or do you think we just need to do it all, saying just keep focusing on what you can do, and hopefully, what we do, and then sort of becomes like a larger group will sort of make the difference which is there, and we just need to live with this whole misinformation economy which we have around us?
I definitely don't think we should live with this misinformation and disinformation economy. I mean, I think it's the responsibility of those in power, including media, including companies like ours, to number one, rely on factual data and data that's been verified, data that's been um, tested and credible, to make sure that it's really factual. And then, like what Aldo was saying and what we've been talking about, to really band together and create a community that uplifts each other instead of pointing fingers. It's up to us as an entire ecosystem to make that happen.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Aldo.
I mean, this goes back to something I said earlier. Let's have one or two simple metrics.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make sure that we communicate those metrics and get the wider community, global community, understand those metrics. People understand, for example, you know, if we were to transact in $1, people understand $1 versus $2. It's hard to understand carbon. We can't even agree on the metric that we would describe it in. If you look at some of the regulations, there are hundreds of questions associated with that. It's easy for someone who's willing or wanting to create spin and confusion to pick any one of those metrics and propagate them. The way to combat that, simplify what we're talking about, unify what we're talking about, and continue to educate on those message. And then those people, as Jacques said, we shouldn't live with them. We should, you know, we should get rid of them. We should vanish with them.
And
Agreed.
extending the thought, Aldo. So therefore, at this juncture, if we want to sort of say, what's the kind of messaging shall be happening to an external world, which sort of showcases the optimism which exists, but without sort of over promising that things will change? Because you want to sort of make people have the hope. They need to sort of trust that things can become better. Is there something which the company should be talking from a messaging perspective, that this is what the future could hold uh, in today's world?
You know, I don't know. I'll answer that from a very simplistic view. Don't tell me what you're gonna do. Tell me what you're doing.
Fair
Um,
enough.
you know, I love Jacques' example. I think is that Thailand, we changed packaging. That's what we did. And we'll do it again, and we'll do it more often. And Cooper, we picked up bottles from going into the ocean. That's what we did. Join us. That is a very different thing than telling me about all the great things you're going to do one day.
Fair enough. Sounds good, Aldo. Jacques, any thoughts to add to this?
100% agree with Aldo, right? Actions speak louder than words, and when you show your actions, it's very credible. I mean, I think it's really a fine balance to be ambitious and realistic without over promising. I mean, to stress the urgency without over dramatizing. So I agree with Aldo. Keep it simple. Talk about the things that you're doing and do it to make sure that everyone understands, and do it consistently and continuously so that people continue to remember.
That's probably the single most important thing, that continuous and consistent. I mean, we fall down all like it's in vogue today and out of vogue tomorrow. And consumers, they recognize that we're on, we're off, we're on, we're off, and then it becomes a marketing campaign, and nobody believes it because it feels like a promotion, and you'll do another sale some other day.
Thank you. I think let me sort of, ask the last question of for this particular panel. Now we've discussed all of this thing. What do you see is the role of the leadership of an organization? So when I'm saying leadership, I'm looking at the top leaderships here, CEO, the founders. What can they really do? Because, extending the point which Jacques you raised, there has to be a face, right? People connect to the face, they build an emotional connect with the individuals, as we have seen across any stakeholder groups. Now, therefore, the role of the leadership which exists across the world of the organizations, from an storytelling or telling clearly the picture of what we rightly said, this is what we are doing. What can they do more, and how can they really sort of build, hope and trust amongst the larger community about the future of this planet?
I can answer. I look to leadership to offer simple messages that that the community that works for that can rally around. Messages that don't offer sort of great vision, because if that organization can't achieve that vision, that leadership is looked like they either can't deliver or they change their mind. And I could speak for Cooper. One of the things that our CEO looks after is doing the right thing. And I love that statement because it empowers the individual to act. And so it's not him pushing down some edict, because quite frankly, that is a difficult thing to do. But it is encouraging the individuals to take action on what they know to be right. And especially in sustainability, people know what's right. It isn't really all of that hard to understand that there are things that would either damage our environment or would not. So yeah, leadership needs to be on that message and encourage people to make the decisions that they know are right.
Yeah.
To add to what Aldo was saying, I expect senior leaders to know and advocate for what's right, but also to advocate that what's right for the planet, for the world, is also what's right for business. That driving sustainability and climate action and driving business growth go hand in hand, and you can't really have one without the other. Um, at DKSH, we're seeing this more and more within our company and with the clients that we work with. And I think really, for me, this is the unlock. If senior leaders are able to make that unlock, that understanding sustainability and business are intertwined, then I think the messaging and the authenticity will come much more. Companies will then start adopting sustainability more than just a tick box exercise and really use it as a driver for business and an enabler for business. And I'm lucky to be working for an organization where my boss, BJ, is a big advocate for this and understands that this is where the future is. And if we don't get on this train, we'll be left behind.
Perfect. And that note, I think we come to the kind of the end of this panel, but I personally found this conversation to be really insightful, and thank you, Aldo and Jacques, for sort of really sharing some really interesting and insightful perspective on this topic. And I'm sure our audiences would love this perspective. And I would like to really thank you both for joining us. And I hope that we can take what this conversation into actual world and sort of really see it sort of happening. But thank you both for being part of this, man. Thank you.
Thanks, no problem.
Thank you.